Welcome to the Wednesday webinar for Boundary Systems. My name is Michael Wimberly, and I will be presenting the administrative tools in Windchill 11.1. So, of course, the overall objective of the webinar is to simply go through and review and demonstrate the administrative tools inside of Windchill. The overall agenda is a simple introduction of myself and Boundary Systems. Also do a brief, just kind of a topic overview, and of course, actually do the demonstration of the product. After that, there'll be a Q&A at the end. For any questions that you have, you can use the inside of the webinar link on your screen. You can go, there's an area in there for questions. You can go through and type in the questions there, and we'll answer the questions at that point. I'll try to probably answer most of the questions at the end. I will actually have them available to see and use that to answer all the questions. I do have a quick question for you. Can everyone hear me? Okay, so you can hear me. Okay. All right, just wanted to confirm. Someone said they weren't able to hear at this current time, so it's not necessarily on our end. It's maybe something on your end. You may want to go ahead and verify that. Make sure your sound is on. Make sure it's coming through the right speakers, things like that. All right, so once again, we'll go ahead and continue on. So once again, quick introduction of myself. My name is Michael Wimberly. Once again, I'm a senior technical specialist at Boundary Systems. I've been working with Boundary Systems for about 6 years now, a little bit over 6 years, but I have over 20 years of experience with PTC products. Actually, I'm coming up close to 25 now with experience on the products. I've been certified in training on PTC products for about 20 years now. So I am a certified trainer in Creo as well as Windchill classes, as well as a certified implementation specialist for Windchill as well. As far as Boundary Systems, first off, Boundary Systems is headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. I myself actually work out of Cincinnati, Ohio, so I am remote from the office. We've been around, Boundary Systems has been around for over 20 years now, and most of our technical specialists have anywhere between 10 and 20 years of experience on PTC products or even in the channel itself. Some of our major accreditations that we're of course very proud of is, of course, we're a product reseller, so we can actually sell you the software. We're a preferred service provider, so when things come up and PTC needs basically contract something out, we're one of the people that they'll come to for that. Of course, certified training partner, so you can either come to one of our training centers for training, we can come to you for training, hold it on site, or somewhere in between. We can find a location to go to because we do have a traveling training center that we have laptops that we can use for that. Like I just mentioned, we do have authorized training centers as well. We are, of course, PTC maintenance partner and certified Windchill implementer. We are currently supporting over 100 Windchill locations in North America alone. So we actually have quite a few Windchill implementations that we're actually working with customers on as well. What you'll see on the right side of the screen are just a few of the customers that we work with currently. This, of course, isn't everyone. These are just a few of those that we're actually currently working on or working with currently. All right. Now, the mission overall for Boundary Systems is to have the most technical expertise on PTC products of any company in the world. So what we do is we try to make sure that our technical specialists are SMEs in different areas. So we're not going to have one SME that has expertise in everything. We're going to have SMEs that actually have expertise in specific fields, which once again helps to benefit us and our customers, because we have people that can go in and reach the different areas or have experience in the different areas that they're looking for, which helps us. The next item is to understand the needs of our customers, to use the understanding as a basis of our recommendation in their product lifecycle management. So once again, because of our expertise that we have in the different areas, we can basically better meet our customer needs by understanding, what they're looking to do and how the software applies to that. With that, of course, we also guarantee the success of every solution. Basically, we're not going to go through and try to sell you something just to make a profit. We do want to be profitable. Everybody does. That's just the business. But what's more important to us is to make sure that what we're implementing for you is successful, is actually doing what it's supposed to do, and does make your business better, which is the last bullet item, is to go in and decrease costs, to decrease time to market, and increase quality. So anytime we go through, us or any company as a whole, anytime you implement anything new, it is to do one, if not all of those things: decrease costs, decrease time to market, and of course increase quality. So we want to make sure that whatever we're selling you, we understand how we're going to use it in your application. That way, once again, we can guarantee the success of it and help you to achieve your next level of success as a company. All right. Now, just general contact information. If you want to get in touch with me, once again, there's my name, Michael Wimberly. My phone number is 513-415-0747, and then my email address is mwimberly@boundarysys.com. If you have any sales-related questions, you can reach our sales team at 440-274-0291, or of course, you can email us at sales@boundarysys.com. I'll also post this information at the end of the webinar as well, so you'll actually have access to that too. So it'll be listed as well with a couple other things available. So once again, the information that we're going to cover is simply the administrative tools inside of 11.1. So at this point, we'll go ahead and jump into our demonstration. So when you look into Windchill, you will see as a whole, looks 11.1 and 11.0 will basically look the same. So you have the same information. So over here on the right side, on the left side, we'll go in. You have two different levels as far as administration. You have the site administration level. You also have the organization administrative level. So I'll go ahead to the site level, and then of course go into the utilities area. And utilities is where we have the different areas that we can now go through and manipulate our system. So at the top you have system administration, in the middle you have business administration, and then down at the bottom you have auditing administration. Once again, based on where you are, who you're logged in as, whether you're the site administrator or the organization administrator, you will see different levels of information. Here at the system administration level, we see quite a bit of information. I have a second tab that I'm actually logged in as the business administrator or the organization administrator, and you can see there's quite a bit less inside of here than if I was in here as a system administrator. So as the system admin, we want to be able to access a whole lot more information. Once again, more the installation level, behind the scenes type things, whereas the organization administrator, a lot of what we're doing is more on the business level. So that's why we still have quite a bit of information at the business administration group, because that's mainly where our organization administrators work, is more at the business level versus at the site level where we're more IT looking functionality inside of there. So from here, we'll just kind of hit a couple of different areas and just kind of show the information and the interfaces. That's one of the things that has changed in quite a few of the areas, whether you're coming from 10.2 or 11.0, 11.1, they've actually implemented more of the HTML interface and removing some of the Java interface, which is once again making it easier for us to go through and manipulate and not have to worry about the updating versions of Java and giving us errors if that actually happens and we're not aware of it. So once again, we'll start at the top area under system administration. One of the areas I like to touch on that I still feel is underused is, of course, the calendar management area. This is very important, especially if you're doing workflows, if you're doing change management, anything that needs an approval or a task may be assigned to someone. The calendar area is where we can go through and set up, just like when we do inside of Office, inside of our Outlook, we go through and we set up that, we're out of office. So inside of here, we can kind of do the same thing. But with the out of office here, we're basically setting up when we're out of office and we're delegating information to someone else. So if I'm going on vacation next week, so I can go through and say, okay, I'm going to be on vacation these days next week. I can come over here and say, during this time, delegate my work. So I can go in and say delegate it, and then I can come over here and specify who I want to delegate it to, have it go in and find that individual, and now that individual will now get the work that normally would come to me. It will now be delegated to that person during that period of time. So I will go through and once again have them get my information. The worst thing that happened whenever, we talked about increasing time to market. Well, one of the things that help time to market is to make sure that everything stays on schedule. The worst thing that happened is for somebody to have a task assigned to them and that task sits in their inbox until they come back from vacation. This avoids that. So I'm able to go in and set this up so once again I can have my information sent to that person during that period of time. I can go through and manipulate my calendar specifically. As an administrator, I can go through and set up a system calendar, events as well. A lot of companies have shutdown time. Well, when we are going in and setting up our task, we're going in maybe doing project work, we're creating a project plan, and in the calendar we go through and set up when holidays are. We can go through and set up when there's shutdown time. So when we're actually going in and scheduling the project plans and we're going in and saying it takes so many days, those days will be incorporated into that as well. So it won't look for something to be completed when the plan is shut down. It will basically avoid those, kind of like it does on weekends. It understands Fridays and Saturdays are basically weekend days, so those aren't accounted for as well. So we can go through and set up system calendars as well, and I can also go through and search for individual calendars as well. So I can go in and find their calendar and manipulate their calendar too. And now I have their specific calendar and I can go through and set up time for them. Now, this is beneficial once again when somebody goes on vacation and forgets to do this, or the unfortunate circumstance, somebody may be dismissed from the company. We can go through and set that as well. And so from this date, I can go in and say delegate this, and then I can say delegate indefinitely. So basically from that point forward, anything that would normally go to John Evans now gets delegated to someone else. So now, once again, somebody will get those particular tasks until we actually go behind the scenes into our workflows or whatever and remove that individual from those particular tasks. But once again, this is one of the areas that is definitely beneficial. And as I said, that's still considered an underused area inside of Windchill. All right. So we have the calendar information. We also have, of course, the file server information. So you have the file server management, the vault configuration, site administration, the vaulting rules that we may want to go through and set up, revaulting scheduling, replication scheduler, and then of course content replication rules. So if we do have replication servers, we can go through and schedule when the replication occurs between the two, and of course the rules as far as when information is actually being replicated. One of the things, of course, we can look at is always the vaulting information. The vaulting information, you can see one of the things that is beneficial is that between 11.0 and 11.1, this interface has changed as well. It's no longer using the Java interface. So we are using the HTML interface, and you can see, first off, it comes up a lot quicker than it has in the past, but we still have all the same general information to go in and look at. Here's our site, our masters. There's our host where the actual information is stored. There's our vaults. And we can actually see where that vault is actually, the actual external storage location of that vault. We can see that here as well, as soon as I can drag on it. So we can actually see where that information is stored on the hard drive, which hard drive it may be on. So we can see all that. If once again, if it has replications, we can see all that. Master folder locations, all those different things we can see inside of here. And if necessary, we can always create a new host, because now we're going in and storing data on a different server. So we can go through and specify another host and then set up the rules and everything associated with them inside of here as well. So quite a bit of information inside of there that we can do. Once again, that's actually our file storage, so where the actual files that we're creating, the actual physical file is located on one server. There's also inside of here We have personal cabinets. Personal cabinets is where we have information for users that may have been deleted from the system. So maybe they have something, we've deleted them out of Windchill. There may be in our Active Directory. So we actually haven't gone in, and they may still have something that's checked out, but not checked out to a workspace, just checked out within inside of Windchill. We can still access that information. If they still have a personal cabinet that has some of that default information inside of here, we can see that here. We can see that the information, this individual is basically broken from the system. So at any point in time, anything that they may still have in their cabinet, we can actually simply go in and remove that cabinet information. So we can come in here and say, okay, this person we want to get rid of, and that actually completely removes them or finishes removing them from the system. So there may come times when we do delete people from Windchill, but they may have something kind of floating around in the background, which once again isn't stored in the workspace. It may be actually, as I said, just checked out within the Windchill database, but not checked out to an actual workspace. So they just did a checkout and didn't do a checkout and download. So we can go in and remove that information from inside of there. We also have Windchill Performance Advisor. So inside of here, we can actually go through and get reports inside of here as well. So we can have license usage reports that we can go in and do. We can specify when these reports can happen. Configuration Assistant. Here we have Windchill Properties. Once again, performance metrics that we can go through and set up. This information we can go through and use for ourselves, or we can go through if we want PTC to kind of do some investigation, or we want them to help us to optimize some things, we can go through and do that as well. When we actually go through and set up that information, or we export that information out, it will export that information out as an XML file. I actually downloaded one from a previous from a different system because there wasn't anything in here for me to actually show, but we can see inside of here are the XML files, and of course whatever application you have to go in and open it up. This one actually is using ArborText once again as the tool to go through and open it up with, and I'm going to just open it up as a text file, and inside of here I can see all that information. So I'm looking at basically Windchill database statistics, and I can see all the information inside of here. So I can use this to kind of do some troubleshooting, or just to go in and see how the system is performing, what information is actually being recorded inside of here. So we can see how many of these different things were executed within a certain period of time. And that's what we're looking at inside of here. So shows quite a bit inside of here. As I said, each one of these things are exported as XML file. There isn't another compressed file that we can go through and export, or I'm sorry, unzip as well to see the information inside of here. So even the Windchill system information, we can go through and look at that as well. So, as I said, quite a bit of information that can be used and reviewed within the system. All right, so go ahead and close that out. We also, of course, have Purge Management. So inside of here is where we can go through and actually begin to purge our data. Purging our data, of course, is when we want to go through and simply delete out old versions. We're not looking to archive it. We're looking to get rid of it. We don't actually want to be able to go back to that. So basically, we're going to delete it out of the system. So we can go through and set up our different purge queues. We can go through and specify the creating of a purge. So we can go through and now specify what information we want to go through and purge. So if there is a query, we can go through and find that particular query. We don't actually have one, so of course it's not going to go through and find anything. So we would actually go in and create our own query. But inside of here, if we did create a query, maybe we want to continue to purge, all but the latest 3 versions of a file, we can go through and do that as well. So we can go through and use our purges, store those purge setups, and continue to execute those as we see fit. So it's once again kind of like saving a saved search. So we go through and create that queue information and then continue to be able to execute that as we see necessary. All right. Let's go back. Queue management. This is also an area that a lot of people kind of dabble in just a little bit. One of the main areas that people look in or they come in here for is simply the publishing queues. So inside of here is where we can go through and see what things are basically being published, what things are waiting to be published in there. So we can go in and see. This is also where we can go in and look and see if things are tied up or basically being locked up. We can see what the actual job is, and from here we can actually go through and remove that job as well. You have the main queues, the L, M, and H, which are basically low, medium, high priorities. As far as where the different items are located, or basically which queue it goes to. There is an actual properties file that can be set up to designate where the information is coming from and which queue it should go into. There are some default settings inside of there as far as what priority things are set to. I think one of the ones is when you're doing the on-demand purge. I think that ends up being, I think, a high, so it may go into the HQ inside of there, so it actually purges pretty quickly. So once again, the high, medium, or low level as far as priorities of the actual publishing queues. And like I said, these are the main ones that people look into, are the publishing queues, just in case our publisher gets stalled for a reason. We can see what that information is, and once again be able to delete that item from in here if necessary. All right. Then, of course, we have the server status. Inside the server status just gives us the overall status of the server that we're in, making sure that it's working properly, making sure that everything is working as necessary. We can see, of course, it is available. We can see that currently there's simply just one user on there. We can actually see the management of the server itself. And then, as I said, a little bit more detail down here at the bottom. So there's the actual site information as far as where we're at. And then over here on the left side, you have some monitoring tools, and you also have system configuration collector. So if we go in and select on there, we can go through and collect information about our system. So performance, we can expand that, and inside of there it'll show us all the information it's going to collect. So we simply would go in and select that and basically tell it to go through and collect that particular system information. Once again, collect that information as necessary. We can now go through and examine that information to see what it is that we're looking for, or examining, once again, for speed purposes or whatever. We can see when things are hung up. So that's a good area as well. And also, that specific area is also located here. So we can do it under server status, but of course it actually has its own little tab here for the collector as well. One of the things that I currently don't have set up, but there's also license management. Inside of here, as Windchill moves forward and it goes to some of the navigate tools, it will actually be more of a license-based area. So we will actually have licenses that we'll also be able to control. So this will actually control that information inside of here. So Windchill at some point will become license-based coming up as we migrate to the navigation functionality inside of Windchill. All right. Then after that, of course, we can now go into the actual business section. So inside of here, you have quite a bit of information we can go to manipulate, whether, once again, you're at the system level doing things, or you are at the actual business level. So whether I'm in here as a site administrator or I'm in here as the organization administrator, I will be able to go through and manipulate that information. So either one of those will give me that area. I'll just come back into the site area, and then just hit a couple of these items as far as customizations that we can do in the system as well. One of them is simply the numbering scheme. So from right here, we're not actually going to go in and change a number, but it's actually going to pull up the area inside of the help guide to allow us to be able to manipulate the numbering scheme. This is actually pretty nice. Inside of here, there's quite a few things that we can go through and manipulate. As far as our numbering sequence. So when we go through and set up our OIRs, our object initialization rules, we can go through and actually specify our numbering schemes. So we can actually go in and specify the scheme itself that we're going to pull it from. So we actually can go through and create that numbering scheme, and then we're going to go through and specify what the start number is, and then the increment from that point forward. So we can go through and set that up. So for example, here's an example of that here, where we have a numbering scheme. We created a scheme called it MySequence or MySequent. And then it basically starts at 100, and from 100 it increments in values of 5. So the next one it pulls out will be 105. Next is 110, 115, so on and so forth. So it'll continue to increment that way. So we can go through and set those things up as well. We can also go through and specify constraints or constants, sorry. So we can actually go through and specify a constant for our numbering schemes. Now, because we can go through and set up numbering schemes for different object types, we may want to go through and add a prefix or a suffix to a numbering scheme. So for our CAD models, everything starts with CAD, just general information, generic setting. So we can go through and set that up so that it has a part number, but also in front of it, it starts with CAD. So we know that it's a CAD file. So we can go through and set things up like that as well. So we can go through and have constants in there. A lot of people have intelligent numbering schemes, and this helps to go in and incorporate those into the actual Windchill system as well, to be able to go in and have your intelligent numbering scheme automatically populated for you within the system. Same thing with versioning. We can always go in and manipulate the versioning schemes. Once again, it's just going to go in and show us the general information for our versioning schemes. Inside of here, you have your general out-of-the-box versions where it's just numbers and letters. Based on the life cycles that you set up, you can go through and specify where everything is using numeric or using mil standards, which is once again letters or numbers, or you can go through and have it where it can be state-based, or based on the state that you're going to, you can go through and specify a number or a lettering scheme. So I can go through and say everything that is in pre-production, my revisioning scheme will always be numbers. But as soon as it gets to a release state, then I want it to switch over to letters, and then I can go through and set that up in my life cycle. So once it goes to a release state, it will go through and revise and have it set to letters instead of going into numbering schemes. So those can be set up. The other thing that's important to understand with your versioning is that when you do set that up, it is actually a single file that you're going in and manipulating. So it's not multiple versionings of files that you're going to go through and update. The versioning file that you update will be a single file. You'll just have different areas of that will have the versioning schemes that you go through and set up. And in your object initialization rule, you're simply going in and calling out that specific versioning scheme from that single file. So that is something that will be edited, or that can be edited, once again, with your specific versioning scheme, and then once again called out in the object initialization rule. All right. And then, of course, we have our life cycles that we can go through and manipulate. This is also an area that we can go through and use. Inside of here, we can go through and create life cycles at any of the levels. We're currently at the site level. We can go through into the organization level and add life cycles at that level, and allow those to be propagated down. Always remember that when we're dealing with any of these, the life cycles, as well as the OIRs, which we'll get to in just a moment, the higher you set it up, the more it's propagated down. So when I set something at the organization level, it affects the organization, at the organization as well as the product or library level as well. If I go all the way up to the site level, which is where I'm at now, that can propagate to any of the organizations if you have multiple organizations within your system, as well as the products and libraries that are available underneath those as well. So it can be set up inside of there. So inside of here, one of the other things that has also been updated in here is that, excuse me, I can go through and edit this information. And then once again, the benefit here is when we look at this actual life cycle, it's now, once again, no longer using the Java interface. It is now using an HTML interface, which once again makes it a lot easier and simpler to go through and use. So the layout of it is pretty much the same as what you've seen in the previous interface, but once again, now it's using an HTML interface versus using the actual Java interface. So no more Java errors that we have to deal with when going into our life cycles themselves. So I'll just cancel out of that And of course, on this one, we will go through and undo the checkout because we're not actually going to make any changes to that. All right. And then from there, as I mentioned before, you have the object initialization rules that we have. As you can see, we are at the site level, so it's only showing the items at the site level. If I was to go to the organization level and go into that same area, I can see that there are a few things inside of here for this particular organization that was set for our dynamic documents. So we did set a rule for our dynamic documents within that specific organization. So if it was a different context level, then we would actually see that context called out, of course, in that context column for that particular object type. So we can go through and set that up there as well. Of course, I can always come over here into my organizations. I can go into the PTC one, same thing, go in here into the OIRs. And if I go down a little bit, I can also see that inside of there, there's another one for the part as well. So I've gone through and set up a OIR for that part level object as well. I'm sorry, for the part object at the organization level. Sorry. But I can see that I've set that up as well. So as you go down further, you'll still see the objects for the rules for that object going up. So if I go down to the product and library level and I have a rule written in that product and library, I will still see the one for the organization level. I'll also still see the one for the site level as well. Now, the way those work, if you're not familiar with that, is the last one it reads wins. So if I do set up an OIR at the product or library level and whatever I have set in there is duplicated above, then the item in that product or library will be read and set up for that particular object type. So if I set it at the lower level, it will go in and override the upper level rules. If I don't set them in the upper levels, for example, folder path. If I don't set up a folder path at the product level, but I still have one at the organization level, then the one at the organization level will be propagated down to that product level. But once again, whatever I have specifically at the lower level will actually go through and be shown at that lower level, or basically be read from that lower level. All right, and then we also can go into our participant administration, and inside of here, of course, we would go through, and if we're creating a new user, we create a new user here. Now, I do recommend that when you do create a new user, don't do it at the site level. The reason being is that what happens is, well, this one is actually, I'm actually at the org level. So it will be associated with this organization PTC. But if I am at the site level, and I go through and create a new user, there is no organization that user will be associated with, which they will now go into the unaffiliated grouping, which basically means they don't have a home. They can log into the system, but they have access to absolutely nothing. They're not in an organization, which not being in an organization will go through and not have them associate to any products or libraries. So what you'll end up having to do is go back into that user, editing them, and then come over here and specifying the product that you want them associated with. I'm sorry, the organization that you want them associated with. And you will go through and select that, and now it will go through and update that information for them. But once again, to avoid any of that, I would always create your users within that organization level. That way they are directly, all that organization information is already set up inside of there and you don't have to worry about that. Also, something else to keep in mind, customers nowadays are also using Active Directory as their basically user container. So that's fine. Just keep in mind also that if you are linked to your Active Directory or whatever other LDAP you may be associated with, that is what's controlling your users. So you cannot come into Windchill, into the actual participant administration area and actually change anything about that user. That information will be driven by the other LDAP. I'll just once again say Active Directory. So that information will need to be changed within Active Directory. Now, the way you do associate them within Windchill is now you will go through and create a group and then add that user to the group. And of course, that group is now where you can go through and associate them to a role within the product. So once again, when you're going in and manipulating your users, if you are using Active Directory to go in and control your users, then you do not have permission, or you will not have the ability to edit them within inside of Windchill. But you will be able to add them to different groups and roles within inside of Windchill. But the actual properties of that individual will be controlled by Active Directory, or once again, whatever other LDAP you may be using at that point in time. Policy administration. Inside of here is where we will go through and now manipulate who can do what at different levels. So once again, you can see inside of here that the interface is a lot cleaner as well. Once again, we're not using Java anymore for this. And I think this may have been updated in 11. But once again, if you haven't used 11, then you're just not used to it just yet. So currently, we are looking at just the site level. I can come over here and specify, instead of showing a single context, showing all the context. Now, this area will be available at all your context levels. So you will see this available at the product level. You'll see it available above it in the organization level. And of course, you'll see it like we are now inside of the actual site level. Once again, same thing here. We go through and set that information down at the lower level, and it propagates to just that particular product or library that you're associating them with. If you do set it at the organization level, then it will be for that user across all of the different products and libraries that you have. So, and of course, when we do go in and set up our permissions inside of here, our policies inside of here, we will go through and set that information up. And by setting it up, you are setting it for that individual, and we can set that up for, there's a domain, the context that they're in, the type of object that it's going to be associated with, as well as the state. So when we do have our life cycles and we define our different states in our life cycles, the way to control what people can do at the different states is to go through and control it here inside of the policy administrator. So we would set it for the individual states inside of here and who it is. So the participant is the team member. It applies to the participant. Now that kind of seems rhetorical, but it's actually a little bit different. You also have the option inside of here, instead of applying to the participant, you can have it apply to everyone but the participant. So basically, instead of setting a rule specifically for, a collaborator, I'm going to set a rule for everybody except for the collaborator. So I can actually go through and set that up instead. So it's kind of doing the opposite. So I want everybody except for the collaborator to have, delete permission, or not to have delete permission, whatever it is you want to go through and set up. So I can go through and set it up, basically kind of doing the inverse inside of here. So that's where that comes in, as once again, it's beneficial. We can go through and set it up for the participant, and then say it applies to the participant or everyone except for the participant. So this, once again, is a pretty cool area to manipulate as well. In here, we also have our preferences. Of course, inside of our preferences is where we can go through and set up what things can happen within the system. Simple example is when we go through and we add something to our workspace. When we add something to our workspace, do we automatically download, all of the family table items? Do we automatically download all the related items? What is it? Is it all required or none? As far as the item that we're selecting. So we can go through and gather all the parts. So when we do a download an assembly, do we download all of the CAD files and the WT parts? Do we gather all the drawings? All those different things we can go through and set up inside of our preference manager. We can also go through and set up frames. If you guys aren't using frames, that's something else that you can go through and set up. Frames is a way of basically being able to undo. For example, if I go in and have frames set up inside of my system, and in my workspace, I go through and I download a file. And the file that I downloaded, it actually, the reuse in workspace checkbox was deselected, which means when I downloaded the file, it downloaded files. It downloaded and overrode files that I may have modified. Without having frames, I'm pretty much lost at that point in time because it overrode anything in my workspace that was modified. By having frames, what I'm able to do is undo that download and go back to my items still being modified within my workspace, and then redo the download and make sure that the checkbox for reuse modified content or content in my workspace, make sure there is a checkbox inside of there so it doesn't override anything. Now, with that, if you're not sure what the information is, you can see everything's broken down quite a bit into the different areas. You can always come over here and do a search. So one of the easiest things to do is just simply go in and type in what you're looking for. I type in frame, and it goes in and it takes me to the default drawing frame location. If that's not what I'm looking for, I'll continue to move forward. And then here's the option for workspace frame stack size. Currently the value is set to 0, which basically means it's not going in and saving any frames, which means whatever you do, it's just overriding what's already there. You can go through and change that so that it keeps so many frames inside of your associated with your workspace. So a good number, sometimes it's setting it up to 10. Now, keep in mind also that when you are doing frames, it is going in and executing or basically recording anything that happens to your workspace. So whenever you do a save, it goes in and creates a frame. Anytime you add something to the workspace, it creates a frame. Anytime you check something out to the workspace, it creates a frame. So any activity that you do inside that workspace is being recorded. So keep that in mind. It's not recording the individual steps that you're doing inside of Creo. It just simply records the step that you're doing between Creo and Windchill. So once again, your saves, your uploads, those things is actually going in and recording inside of your frames. All right. So inside of here, we can also go in and look at type and attribute management. So inside of here, once again, we have our general information. So this is where if we want to go create a subtype of a document, subtype of a CAD file, subtype of a WT part file, this is where we'd actually go in and do that. So we go in and find those particular object types, once again being a part. And then inside of here, we can see the different ones that are already there. We can go through and create our own. And then if we want specific attributes associated with those, we could also go through and create the attributes here. We can go through and create reusable attributes, which means we can use them on multiple object types. And once again, not have to recreate them every time. We can also go through and create enumerations, which are basically values that we can use in conjunction with our attributes. So we may have some values that we want to go through and use. Maybe we have something such as location, and the locations may be a different plants that we can go through and use. So we can have those listed and be able to use those for multiple attributes inside of our systems, or just simple values, whatever it is that we want to go through and use. So that's where we're going to use attributes inside of there. We also have report management. I think I just jumped over that one. These are all the out-of-the-box reports. We can go through and use any of those. If you have Windchill business reporting, then you're also able to go through and customize additional reports. So if what you're looking for isn't here, there's specific information that you want. If you have the Windchill business reporting application, then you can go through and use that as well. What it actually does, it uses a third-party application to allow you to go through and basically create your own report to go in and use in conjunction with the information inside of Windchill. So that helps out as well. Some of the last couple of items that we'll look at down here is, of course, our workflow template administration. Anytime we go in and manipulate our workflows, this is where we're going to go in and do that in. And just like I mentioned a moment ago, one of the things that is beneficial here is sorry, wrong one. My apologies. I am in the process. I want the template administration. Oh, I didn't mean to initiate. My apologies. I meant to go into view. Go into the viewer, and once again, what we'll see right away no longer Java. It is HTML. And once again, we can go through and now manipulate it from inside of here. Now I'm just in the viewer, so I'm not actually editing it. So, but I can go in and see it. Once again, we saw how quickly it pulled up on the screen because it's not going in and using any of the Java applications. It's using basically internet applications, HTML, to go through and execute this or to show it. So we can use it for viewing it. Of course, it'll have us the same way if we were actually going in and editing this as well. Still same speed to go in and bring it up. There we have our icons on the side still. So the layout is very similar to what we had before. But once again, HTML instead of using Java. So once again, a lot quicker to go through and update our actual data inside of Windchill using HTML. All right, and then we have the workflow process administration. So if we have a process, so we have something that's actually executed, we want to see where it is. We can go through to our process administration, and we can go through and find the processes that we're looking for. I don't think I have anything running currently, so there's nothing for it to show. But if we had some promotion requests that we're running, it will go through and show those. We can actually see what the status of those different items are as well. Two of the other areas down here is, of course, our job monitor. So when we are doing publishing, this is where we can go through and see what's being published. So inside of here, we can see, oh, great, there are things that were published. We can see where they were published from and whether or not they were successfully published or whether or not they failed. So we can see that at this point, we do have jobs that have been successfully published. It is showing everything, but we can go through and filter it down to see, specific areas. So I just want to see what has failed because we had items that have failed. We can go through and look at those, analyze the information associated with that to actually see why it failed. So over here will tell us, maybe it couldn't find the publisher. It couldn't find the worker that it was looking for. So then at that point we can go through and get, we can get to the actual, go into the worker, and see if the worker is stopped for whatever reason. So inside of here to get to the actual job information, once again, we will go into the WVS job monitor and then select on it, and it'll go through and show the information. Now it also shows it based on where you are. I'm at the site level, so it's showing everything. You actually will get a little bit less information if you do it from over here or the quick links. So you also have the job monitor as well. But if you want to see everything, I would suggest going to either the organization level or the site level to go through and view the appropriate information. All right. Now, if you also want to go through and publish or create a publishing job, we can come over here and schedule when to go through and actually execute a publishing job. So we want to go through, maybe we just imported a bunch of information. We want to go through and we didn't create all the viewables for them, or maybe our publisher was down. We need to go through and re-execute the publishing jobs. We can go through and now go through and specify what we want to go through and publish. Publish all basically CAD documents, or we can go be more specific. Republish all default representations, publish all parts with no representation, publish all CAD documents with no representation. So we can be very specific so it doesn't go through and basically redo stuff that doesn't need to be done. We can actually go through and specify here, if it doesn't have an actual viewable, execute it, create one. So we can go through and set that up. We can go through and specify when to execute it. Do we want to go in and do it right now? Or we want to do it later in the evening when everybody's off the system. We want to start at maybe 9 o'clock at night. So we can go through and specify start at 9 o'clock at night, and then basically execute it. We can also go through and specify the frequency of it. Is this a one-time thing, or is this something we want to go through and have done every night, once a week? How often do we want this to be executed if it's not just a one-time shot? And then, of course, you can also do that and simply have it create a log file. We'll go through and simply show you the files that it's going to go through and basically publish before we actually execute that. So not actually execute itself, but actually go through and just give us the log information. All right, and then down here is just additional information. One of the key areas to make sure that what you're working on is appropriate as far as licensing. We can always come over here to our license management area and see the usage and the licensing that are actually being used within the system. This one, of course, is pretty small as far as the usage of that. I do have a different one that I can go through and show you that has a little bit more information inside of it. So we can see inside of here that it actually does. You can see, in October we've had 15 users log in. September we had 22 users logged in. We can go through and specify, how often we want to go through and execute or see the information for. So I'm going to go in and select September, and it goes through and shows me basically based on the weeks in September how many people logged in during those weeks. So we can see our busiest week was basically the week of the 22nd of September. So once again, this is good when you are evaluating whether or not you have the appropriate number of licenses based on the number of users that are accessing the system. This is doing your own internal audit. That way, once again, if for some reason you do get audited, you can make sure that all your ducks are in a row, that you have, if you have 22 people accessing the system, you have at least 22 licenses that are available to access the system. But as I mentioned earlier, at some point in the near future, as we continue to move forward into the navigate applications for Windchill, there will actually be license management directly for that as well. So it'll be more like a license management that we have for Creo that will also work inside of Windchill as well. So it will become license-based, one-to-one license-based as well. All right, so that's just general information, as I said. So this is just kind of an overview of the information inside of Windchill that we can go through and use. You can also go to your quick links area. One of the areas that's also important, not just for you, but for your users as well, is the software download area. So any of the additional applications that you may have will be listed there. So if they need a version of Creo View, they can download that right here. If you have a plugin for Microsoft Project, that's right here. If you have the desktop integration, which allows Windchill to be integrated into Office products, you can download that from here as well. And then now when you download items from Windchill, it will actually download and open inside of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever you have set up for those particular items. So that's it for the overall Windchill information. At this point, if there are any additional questions, we'll definitely go through and take those now. Definitely type them into your questions area if you have any questions at this point. While we're waiting on that, I will continue forward with the remainder of the presentation. So now, upcoming. As far as for boundary systems, we do have some upcoming webinars. So you can see over here on the left side, we are referring to this current webinar that you're on right now. So that is the current one. We do have 2 additional ones coming up. Was Creo efficiency improvement, using basically reviewing map keys. And then we also have one coming up on the 14th of November for what's new inside of Creo 5. We also have some training coming up. That's just a quick little blurb. I'm actually going to go in and show you our webpage so you can see what's available there as well. But to get to our webinars, you go to our webpage at boundarysys.com. You can go to webinars from there. You can also go into boundarysys.com and look at our training schedule from there. One of the questions that is asked that did come through is there a tool or report to go through and export the permissions for the actual users or groups? I don't think there is. I am not aware of anything that we can export out of the system that will give us basically that policy administration area, exporting that out. I'm not familiar with anything that will allow us to export that. That would be very useful. But I'm not aware of any tool that that is actually available for that. All right. Once again, our contact information, if you do want to get in touch with me, if something comes to your mind after we get off the webinar, you can once again reach me at my phone number, 513-415-0747, or my email address at mwimberly@boundarysys.com. You can also reach sales if you have any sales-related questions at 440-274-0291 or sales@boundarysys.com. We also have a ticketing system for any help that you may need. For our current customers, we can go through and use the ticketing system. That's actually at support@boundarysys.com. Any user can go through, or any individual can go through and actually execute an email to us by simply going to support@boundarysys.com. I'll actually go through and show you a couple of pages at this point. Pull up a couple of web pages real quick. So the first thing, of course, is our actual homepage. So you'll actually see a page inside of here. There's our training information. There's our events. So if I go to training, we can look at the training schedule itself. And the training schedule will actually go through and show us the different training that we have at different locations. So you can see here's our training, our Cleveland office. We have our Chicago office that we will go through and do training in. Charlotte, Orlando. We're getting close to winter time, so I'll be more than happy to go to Orlando with somebody. Just let me know. Inside of here, you'll see all the classes that are available. Of course, here in Cincinnati, Troy, Michigan, Pittsburgh area. We also do them in Canada, and of course, we can go through and set up classes in Indianapolis. We don't have any currently scheduled, but we can go through and set those up. Now, just something for you to be aware of. In the Pittsburgh area, we actually have 3 classes coming up that are guaranteed to run. So if you do need to go through and get into any of these classes will be running. This one is November 5th for the Intro to Creo. We have one November 12th for Intro to Model-Based Definition in Creo, and we have another one for Business Administration for Windchill, and that's once again in December. So these classes are guaranteed to run. So if you do need to get into one of those classes or would like to get into one of those classes, feel free to contact Connor. Here is Connor's information on the web page. So you can reach him either by phone or you can reach him by email, and he will definitely get you connected or get you set up to get into that class. We have one there. I think we also have one coming up in Cleveland that's also guaranteed to run. Yeah. So we have a system administration class coming up in December that is also guaranteed to run. That's a class that doesn't happen that often, but we do have one coming up in Cleveland that is guaranteed to run. So if you want to get into that one, once again, contact Connor, and he can get you connected into that class. Once again, you can go to our website and go into our training section, and then we'll show you the training schedule and, of course, Connor's information inside of there as well. Our upcoming events, we actually don't have any more hands-on workshops coming up, but as I mentioned before, we do have a couple of webinars coming up that you can still sign up for. We also have a users conference that is coming up in the area. So there's actually a Three Rivers user conference that is going to happen in Pennsylvania. So this will actually be in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. We are doing a presentation inside of there for Freestyle and Keyshot. And then, of course, the full agenda has not been fully populated just yet, but that is also coming up in November as well. So November 8th is when that is actually going to be held as well. So we have that coming up as well. And then, as I mentioned, we also have our YouTube page. So if you do go into YouTube and you just simply do a search on Boundary Systems, you will be able to get to our actual page, and inside of here we'll have our YouTube videos. So any previous webinars that we've done will be listed here. If you go to the videos link, it will actually show you all the different videos that we currently have and the different subject matters that we've covered. So you'll see quite a bit of information inside of there that you can go through and access through our YouTube page. So I do recommend going into there. There is quite a bit of information inside of there, whether it's Windchill based, whether it's Creo based, or any other applications that we have that we go through and actually use as well. So it's definitely worth going to access it. So at this point, this will conclude the actual webinar itself. And I do want to take the time and say thank you to you all for your attention. And I look forward to seeing you on an upcoming webinar. Have a great remainder of the afternoon.